Hello guys and welcome to week 7 of our lecture, Computer Programming and Fundamentals. For this week, we will be discussing about an in-depth discussion about the if statement as well as one of the types of loop used in Python, which is the while loop. Now, what is the if-else statement in Python? The decision making is required when we want to execute a code only if a certain condition is satisfied. The if, else statement is used in Python for decision making. Now, for the if statement, we have three types. We have the if and else, and then we have the if and else. Okay. So if you have more options or different options, you will likely use the if statement. If you have only one condition, you use the if. If you have two conditions, which is true or false, you use the if else statement. Okay. The Python if statement syntax. So if expression is true, colon, do the code. Okay. So notice if expression is true, colon, execute the code. Here, the program evaluates the test expression and will execute statements only if the test expression is true. If the test expression is false, the statement is not executed. In Python, the body of the if statement is indicated by the indentation. So notice there's an indentation here. The body starts with an indentation and the first unindented line marks the end. Python interprets non-zero values as true. Take note, non-zero values as true. None and zero are interpreted as false. This is the flowchart of an if statement. So notice if test expression is true, then we execute the body of our if statement. If our test expression is false, then we do not execute the body of the if statement. Python if statement example. We have here a problem. So the problem is create a numeric variable called num, set its value to 3. If the value of num is greater than 0, print num, and the string is a positive number. Print the string, this is always printed. Set the value of num to -1. The value of num is greater than 0, print num, and the string is a positive number. For the pseudocode, okay, this is the pseudocode that we prepared. Okay, so create a numeric variable called num. Set its value to 3. If num is greater than 0, note if begin and end. So this will be our body for the if statement. So what will happen is we will print. So output num together with the string is a positive number. And then print. So that is output. This is always printed. Set the value of num to -1. Okay. If num is greater than 0, display is a positive number. This will be our program code for our if statement. Notice this is our comment. So in order for us to see the code, okay, notice our comment for Python, usually in Pydroid, that is green, okay, denoted by the sharp symbol. Okay. Also take note when we are typing our variables, you always have to have proper spaces and indentation. So notice if I will type an if statement, what I will do is if space num space greater than space 0 colon, and then I will press enter. The reason for that is that I will automatically have an indentation. I do not need to type in another symbol, or I do not need to press tab. Okay, I just need to press enter, and then it will be, the next line will be indented. Take note, if the line is indented, it means that this particular line is the body of our if statement. Notice that the next line is not indented. Okay, this means to say that after the if is executed, this line will be executed. But if I put the line inside the indentation, okay, this means to say that this particular line is part of our if body. So take note of that. Indentation is very important in order for us to denote which is part of a particular code and which is not. Okay. So after that, we set num to -1. Okay. Take note, this is a shorthand operator. This is also equivalent to num equals to num minus 1. Okay. Do not forget that. If num is greater than 0, colon, again, press enter, indentation, num is a positive number. And then again, on the next line print, this is always printed. If we execute our code, notice 3 is a positive number. This is always printed. And then this is also always printed. What was not executed? Okay, if we take a look at our code, this part or this if is not executed. Why? The reason behind that is that because num is -1 greater than 0, that is false. Therefore, this body will not be executed. However, because this line is not part of our if body, this was executed. Now, if we change the line, and then if we put it inside the if body, okay, do you think this particular line will still be executed? So let's see. It was not executed anymore. Simply because, as I have said, because if you indent this particular line, this will be part of the if statement, and then the if statement is false, therefore, it will not be executed. So this line will also not be executed. Okay, but if we bring it back, that will be executed. I hope that is clear. For any questions, you can just message me at our group chat in Discord so that we can clarify any misconceptions that you have. In the above example, num greater than 0 is the test expression. The body of if is executed only if this evaluates to true. When the variable num is equal to 3, test expression is true, and the statements inside the body of if are executed. If the variable num is equal to -1, text expression is false, and the statement inside the body of if are skipped. The print statement falls outside of the if block, unindented, hence it is executed regardless of the test expression. Python if-else statement. As I have said earlier, the if-else statement tests the test expression if it is true or false. Now, the syntax is if test expression is true, body of if, else, colon, body of else. The if-else statement evaluates test expression and will execute the body of if only when the test expression is true. If the condition is false, the body of else is executed. Indentation is used to separate the blocks. For the flowchart, notice that earlier, we do not execute anything if the test expression is false. But in an if-else statement, we also have a body or a command for the false condition. Okay? Example if-else statement. Create a numeric variable called num, set its value to 3. the value of num is greater than or equal to 0, print the string positive or 0. Else, print the string negative number. For the pseudocode, notice that we can now use if together with else. And then do not forget to have a begin and end as the body of your if and else statement. This is our sample program. Okay. Okay. So we have num is equals to 3. Num is equals to 3. The output is positive or 0. Okay. If num is equals to, for example, negative 5, the answer is negative number. If num is equals to 0, the answer is positive or 0. Take note, as the rule again with creating if statement, after the condition or test expression followed by the colon, press enter so that your line will be indented and that will serve as the body of your if or your else condition. Okay. Next, if elif else statement. Now, the if elif statements allows us to have multiple test expression, not only just true or false, okay, but we can have multiple test expression. Just like the elif has a test expression, a colon, and a body. Okay. The elif is short for else if, allowing us to check for multiple expression. If the condition for if is false, it checks the condition on the next elif block and so on. If all of the conditions are false, the body of else is executed. Only one block among the several if, else block is executed according to the condition. The if block can have only one else block, but it can have multiple elif blocks. Take note of that. You can only have one else condition, but we can have multiple if condition. We can only also have one if test expression. Now for the flowchart, notice that if the condition is true, we execute the if statement. If it is false, we check for the elif expression. If it is true, we execute the elif body. If not, we execute the else body. So we have our sample problem here. Create a numeric variable called num, setting its value to 2.4. The value of num is greater than 0, print the string positive number, else the value of num is 0, print the string 0, else for any other value of num, print the string negative number. Okay, so we have here the pseudocode. So the pseudocode for elif else is else if. Okay, so if else. Okay, take note of that. If is shorthand for else if. So therefore, the pseudocode that we use is also else if. Okay, so this is the sample code that we have. So notice we set the variable to 3.4 and then later on we will test 0 and negative 4.5. So 3.4 is a positive number. If we try 0, it will display, of course, 0. Okay. If we try negative 4.5 or any other negative number, will display negative number. Okay. In the above example, when num is equal to 3, the test expression is true and the body of if is executed. Sorry. Okay. When the variable num is positive, positive number is printed. If num is equals to 0, 0 is printed. If num is negative, in the case here, negative 4.5, negative number is printed. Okay, so I hope that clarifies how to use if else, and if else statement. Now, we also have what we call a nested if statement, wherein we can find an if statement inside another if statement. Okay, so we can have an if ellipse else statement inside another if ellipse else statement, called nesting in computer programming. And a number of these statements can be nested inside one another. Indentation is the only way to figure out the level of nesting. They can get confusing, so they must be avoided unless necessary. Okay? So the problem here is that we create a numeric variable called num. We input the value of num. If the value of num is greater than 0, okay, we do this if statement. If the value of num is 0, print 0, else print positive number. For the outer if else statement, if the number is not greater than 0, we print the string negative number. Okay, so the condition here is, sorry, we will edit this one. Okay, switching something. If the value of num is greater than or equal to, or equal to, greater or equal to 0. Okay. And then for the pseudocode, it's the same as the if ellipse statement that we have. However, notice that after the begin statement, or inside our begin and end, okay, we will input the if else statement. Okay, that is how we would create that one. And then, as I have said, this must be avoided unless necessary. Why? Because it can get confusing, especially for Python, wherein um, we do not have any sort of like marker if that is the beginning or the end. We only have indentation. Now, if we are going to code this example, I suggest what you do is you do this one. Okay. So if you are creating a nested if else, first you create the outer if else statement. So in this example, what I will do is I have created, okay, we will just repeat this example so that I can show you how I write the code. Okay, was, okay, after doing that, colon, enter. Now, instead of typing the body for the if, I will first write or type the else statement. Okay. And then if you have another if else here, what you could do is to create the if else here. But for this example, what we have is only print, okay, negative. And then after that, I'm done with my outer loop. I will go to the inner loop. Now for the inner loop, what I will do is to create conditions. Okay. I'm having problems with my equal sign. Okay. After doing that, instead of writing the body, I will next write the elif or else. So in this instance, I have else. And then you can go on with the body of your if statement. Okay, print. And for your else, print. That is the most appropriate way of writing this one so that if in case your code gets longer, you will not be confused because you have already prepared the outer loop first before the inner if statement. Take note of that, guys. Do not forget that so that you not have will not have a hard time when creating a nested or long program. Do the outer parts first and then do the inner parts. So we will run this code, enter a number, for example, 0. Okay, it says 0. Okay, if we try another input, let's say 1 or 2, positive. Okay, if we run another one, let's say -9, negative number. So that is our nested if example. Okay, so I have provided a link for sample Python exercises. This will open up a particular website. So please try to do the sample so that you will have a greater understanding of how we are using some of our code. So we in these examples or exercises, you will just input the required code. Okay, so for example, print hello world if A is greater than B. So if A greater than B, for our exam, this will be the format that we will follow. I will not require you to enter the entire code, but you will only fill in the blanks of the code. Okay, so this will be a perfect example of exercises that you could do. Okay, next are loops. So in general, statements are executed sequentially. The first statement in a function is executed first, followed by the second, and so on. There may be a situation when you need to execute a block of code several number of times. Programming languages provide various control structures that allow for more complicated execution paths. A loop statement allows us to execute a statement or group of statements multiple times. The following diagram illustrates a loop statement. Okay, so if the condition is true, input or we will execute the code and then it will go back to the condition. It will check again if it's still true. So it will loop back. Now, if the condition is not true, it's false, it goes to the other codes or statement that we have prepared. The best example that I could think of when running loops are what? Programs running on your cell phone, computers, okay? For example, Microsoft Word or this web page. This web page will run continuously until I press the close button. Then it will close. For example, when you're doing games, your character will still run or play the particular game until its life has ended. Okay. What else? You will still have electricity until you make a payment. If not, okay, your electricity will get cut off. Okay, those are instances where loop can be applied. Our life, for example, as long as our heart or our brain is working, we're still alive. If our heart stops beating, then you're dead. Okay, it's like a loop. Okay, for example, if my heart's still beating, then I'm alive. If my heart's not beating, then I'm dead. Okay, it's like that. Python programming language provides following types of loops to handle looping requirements. We have the while loop, repeats a statement or group of statements while a given condition is true. It tests the condition before executing the loop body. We also have a for loop. It executes a sequence of statements multiple times and abbreviates the code that manages the loop variable. So for loop is a fixed type of loop. We already know the particular limitation, okay, or it is fixed. And then we also have a nested loop, which is you can use one or more loop inside any other while, for, or another type of loop is a do while loop. It's almost the same as a while loop. However, a do while loop is executed at least once. Take note of that. A do while loop is executed at least once. While a while loop, okay, there is some instances where a while loop will not be executed because the condition in a while loop is always at the beginning, whereas on the do while loop, the condition is at the end. Okay. We also have the following loop control statements. A loop control statements change the execution from its normal sequence. When execution leaves a scope, all automatic objects that were created in that scope are destroyed. So Python supports the following control statements. We have the break statement, which terminates the loop and transfers execution to the statement immediately after the loop. Okay, so what's happening in a break statement is that the loop is exited early. For the continue statement, it causes the loop to skip the remainder of its body and immediately retest the condition prior to reiterating. So it's the reverse of break. If break is exit, continue is just like skip. Okay. We will not go on with the remaining part of the body of the loop. However, we will go back to the start of the loop. Okay. Past statement. The past statement is used when a statement is required syntactically, but you do not want any command or code to execute. Okay. What is while loop in Python? The while loop in Python is used to iterate over a block of code as long as the test expression or condition is true. We generally use this loop when we don't know the number of times to iterate beforehand. Meaning to say, guys, most commonly, while loop is used when we do not know how long or how many cycles um, we are gonna do in a particular program. So the test expression might change. Usually, we use a while loop. So the syntax is while condition or test expression colon and then body of the while loop. In the while loop, test expression is checked first. So there's a possibility that the loop will not be executed depending on the test expression. Always remember that the body of the loop is entered only if the test expression is true. After one iteration, the test expression is checked again. This process continues until the test expression evaluates to false. In Python, the body of the while loop is determined through indentation. The body starts with indentation and the first unindented line marks the end. Python interprets any non-zero value as true. None and zero are interpreted as false. For the flowchart, the diagram of the while loop, we have here, notice, enter the while loop, we check or test the expression. If it is true, we go to the body and then we test the expression again. Okay? If the expression is false, we exit the loop. With the while loop, we can execute a set of statements as long as a condition or the test expression is true. So we have here a sample problem. First, we create a numeric variable called I. We set its value to 1. And then while I is less than 6, we print the value of I. For the pseudocode of a while loop is while condition or test expression, and while. And then the body of the while loop will be inside. So for this one, we declare begin end, and then number I is 1, while I is less than 6. We display or print output I, and then do not forget this one. So this one could be written as I is equals to I plus 1 or I plus equals 1. This will be very important for our loop because if we omit this one, we will have what we call an infinite loop, wherein it is a kind of loop in which the condition never turns to false, therefore the loop is executed infinitely. If you take a look at this pseudocode, you notice that because of this particular increment, I will return a value that is greater than 6. Okay. If we will remove this one, this will be an error. This is called a logical error, wherein the program will execute, however, the program will not end. So it will cause your compiler, your program, or your computer to crash. So take note, for any loop, it is important for the condition to be false. Okay, so in a while loop, we should have what we call an increment or a decrement in order for us to evaluate the expression to false. Okay, now we have an example program. So print I as long as I is less than 6. Now, for this one, okay, notice that I have declared or I have set a value of, we do not need to declare the variable in Python. We just need to use it and then set a particular value. So in this instance, I is equals to 1. And then while I is less than 6 colon, okay, same technique that we have used in the if, elif, and else statement. After the colon, you press enter so that your line will be indented. And if your line is indented, it means to say that that particular line is under the parent line. So it means to say in this instance, print I and I plus equals 1 are considered as the body of our while loop. If I make a line which is either on the same indent as while, okay, means to say that that will be executed, okay, after the while loop has completed. So let me show you this particular example. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, if we check, the starting value is 1. 1 is less than 6, that is 2. So print 1. I plus equals to 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Put back here. 2 is less than 6. Print 2. Then becomes 3. 3 is less than 6. Print 3. Become increment. It becomes 4. That's true. Print 4. 4 plus 1. I becomes 5. 5 is less than 6. That's true. Print 5. 5 plus 1, that is 6. And that is false. It will go out of the body. Now, what if we want to check if what I said is true? So in order for us to check that one, I will display a print state here. Okay. If what I said is true, this will only be executed once. Okay. But if I will put this inside the body of our while loop, okay, it was executed 5 times. Okay, so take note of that. It's very important to know the particular location of your code. Okay, so next, remember to increment I or else the loop will continue forever. So in this example, the while loop requires relevant variables to be ready. In this example, we need to define an indexing variable I, which we set to 1. So this is the indexing variable. We have here another problem. So create a numeric variable called I. Okay, so I think, okay, set the value of I to 1. While I is less than 6, print I. I think I will update this. This is not the problem for this in the code. Okay, I have updated our problem. So first we create numeric variables called n, sum and I. We set the value of n to 10, and sum and I, n to 10, sum to 0, and I to 1. While I is less than or equal to n, sum will be the value of sum plus I. Sum will be the value of sum plus I. Take note, we do not have to state that we increment the value of I, because as you will notice, I use the word while. So it means to say we are gonna do a loop. And in a loop, it is required that the looping variable, or the condition for checking the variable, should be automatically added. Okay. So in this instance, we increment I until it is equal to the number 10. Anything great, if I is greater than the value of 10, we exit the loop. Okay. After the loop finishes, display the value of sum. Okay. The output sum is, okay. So for the program, what we will do is the value of n will be inputted by the user. So for this instance, we use the command input. So take note, in Python, if we use the command input, okay, it means to say we are asking value from the user. Okay. Now, input has an open close parenthesis. Okay. Input has an open close parenthesis, which will be the string that will be displayed on our screen. So take note of that. Now, the next thing that you will see in this example is that we use int, or int, open close parenthesis. The purpose of int, open close parenthesis, is to convert your input into an integer. Why? Because all the data type that is accepted by input are string. So take note of that. It only accepts string. So we need to convert your string into a number to get the value of n. Also, if you use int and you enter a string, what might happen? Okay, so we will check that one later. For now, let us take a look at this particular example. Now, in this example, okay, we will accept n from the user, okay, and then we set the value of n to 10. So you need to only choose one. First, I will disable this line. So I will make it into a comment. Why? Because I want to show you what will be the output if we just set the value of 10. Okay, we do not ask input from the user. So I commented that particular line. Okay, and then after doing that, we check for the value of I. If it is less than or equal to n, then we increment the value of sum to I. So this one can also be written as at 1. Okay, that is the same purpose. Okay, next, I is equals to I plus 1. which can also be written as, okay, then we print the value of sum. Take note, again, I will repeat, if you want to print your string together with your variable on a single command, you just use comma. So for example, I want to display sum, comma, and then string. The value of sum will be displayed first. In this instance, the value of, or the string the sum is, will be displayed first before the sum variable. So we will I will show you that particular example later on. For now, let us try to execute this one. Sum is 55. Okay. Now what if, okay, what if I want to display the variable first? Sum, and then we'll say is the sum. Okay. And 55 is the sum. So what happens here is a process or an operation that is called concatenation, wherein we are connecting a variable to a string or a string to another string. We are connecting them or concatenating them. Okay? As I have said earlier, we will try have an input using the input from the user. So let us enable it by removing the comment and then commenting n is equals to 10. Let's say, for example, I only want to do 5. Okay. So 5, 15 is the sum. Is that correct? So 1 is 5, 1 plus 0. So 1, increment 2, 2 plus 1. Let us check. The first answer will be 1 because that's 1 plus 0. Next will be increment 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. Increment 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. Increment 4. 4 plus 6 is 10. And then 5. It is already over 15. Um, okay, I'm getting confused. Sorry. I think it's the best if we print the value of sum for each iteration. Sum, and then sum. Okay, let's check. I do 5. First 1, then 3, and then 6, then 15. Okay, so I was right. It's just getting confused. So first is 1, and then 3, and then 6, and then 10, and then 5. The answer is 15. Okay. So as I've told you earlier, what will happen if I remove int here? Will my program still work? So let's try to see. Check 5. Okay. Notice the error. Type error. less than equal not supported between instances of int and str. So int pertains to integer, str is string. So it means to say the error is happening here. So we are comparing an integer to a string simply because when we input, the variable shall have a data type of string. So in order for you to avoid that error, you need to convert your input into an integer. Okay. However, there's a caveat. You need to make sure that your input is string, or sorry, a number or a number string. If you input a string or a character, you will have an error. Why? Because int can only be used for decimal numbers, base 10. Okay, so take note of that. Of course, you cannot add AS string or you cannot convert it into an integer. Okay, so please take note of that. Later on, we will have what we call error catching, wherein we could avoid the error and then repeat the loop if the user attempted to enter an invalid input. But that will be a topic for later weeks. For now, if you have any questions with regards to this particular instances, just kindly use our Discord chat so that I can answer it properly and your classmates can also know. Okay? So next, we need to increase the value of the counter variable. This is the counter variable. The counter variable is a variable that is used to check if the condition of your loop is already false. Okay, that's the counter variable. In the body of the loop, this is very important and mostly forgotten. Failing to do so will result in an infinite loop or a never-ending loop, causing your program to crash. The break statement. With the break statement, we can stop the loop even if the while condition is true. Okay. This is sample problem. Create a numeric variable called I. Set its value to 1. While I is 6, print I is less than 6, print I. If I is equal to 3, exit the loop. Okay. So I will adjust the indentation here because there was a problem dating the indentation. Okay, this should be inside. Okay. Then this should also be here. Take note of the indentation. Okay. So while I is less than 6, print I. If I is equal to 3, exit the loop. So for our pseudocode, we use break. Okay. The same keyword break for our pseudocode. So while I is less than 6, display I. If I is less than, or if I is equal to 3, take note, equal sign is denoted by 2 equal sign. Equals is denoted by 1 equal sign. This particular equal sign denotes or checks if the value of our variable is equal to the value on the right side. Take note, this is equality operator. Whereas the equal symbol sets the value of our variable from the left side to the value on the right side. Okay, so you might get confused. Please take note, this is checking if these two are equal and then it returns true or false, whereas this one sets the value from the right side to the left side. Okay, so notice if I is equals to 3, begin and end, break, I is equals to I plus 1. If it's not equal to 3, you increment. Okay, so this is our sample program. I is equals to 1 while I is less than 6, colon, print I. If I is equals to 3, colon, break, and then notice indentation should be aligned to the body of our while loop and not inside the break. Otherwise, this will also produce an infinite loop because this particular line will not be executed. So again, take care of indentation. Also, one side note, for the condition, you could actually enclose them in open close parenthesis if you want. Actually, enclosing the condition in open close parenthesis is actually better because you are telling or you are denoting to yourself that we are checking a particular condition. If we run our program, it executes up until the third iteration. Okay. I will not show you an infinite loop because it might crash our emulator. So as I've said, just do not forget to set your counter variable. Okay, do not forget. Okay, if we have a break statement, we also have the continue statement. The continue statement, we can stop the current iteration and continue with the next. So we have a problem here. Create a numeric variable called I, set its value to 1, while I is less than 6, print I. If I is equal to 3, skip the current number. Okay, so we basically have the same code. We just change break to continue. Okay, however, take note, our incrementation is displayed first, or it is executed first, and then our output should be here in line with I. So I will again update our pseudocode. Should be in line with if. Okay. Okay. So I is equals to I plus 1. If I is equals to 3, the first to be executed will be the number 2. The first to be displayed will be number 2. Okay. If I is equals to 3, continue, meaning to say if this line is true, this will not be executed anymore. What happens is that our loop will go back to the condition. Take note of that. If we use break, what happens is that we get out of the entire loop. If we use continue, it goes back to the top of our loop. Okay, it goes back to the beginning of our loop together with the value of the counter variable. So in this instance, if it becomes 3, goes here, 3 is less than 6, so that is true. 3 plus 1 becomes 4. 4 is equals to 3, that is false. Output 4. So in this instance, 3 will not be printed out to the screen. Okay, so let's try to execute our code. So notice 3 will not be executed. It skips or it moves past the number 3 because we use continue. Okay. We also have a while loop with else. Okay. Not only if, you could also use else with a while loop. While in Python. Okay. While loops can also have an optional else block. The else part is executed if the condition in the while loop evaluates to false. The while loop can be terminated with the break statement. In such cases, the else part is ignored. Hence, a while loop's else part runs if no break occurs and the condition is false. Take note of that. If you use a break statement, the else will not be executed anymore because the else statement will be part of the while loop. Okay? So if you use a while loop with else. Okay. So here is our example. Okay, so this is an example while loop with else. First, we create a numeric variable called counter. We set the value of counter to 0. While counter is less than 3, we print inside loop. Else, if the value of counter is greater than or equal to 3, we print inside else. So this is pseudocode. So notice while and while. It actually should be this one. Sorry again. The end while should be here. Okay, and then else. So while, else, and while. Okay. So we declare a variable called counter, we set its value to 0. While counter is less than 3, we print inside loop. Counter is equals to counter plus 1, or you could use counter plus equals 1. Else, begin, output, or print inside else. So the code for this one is here. Take note, after the colon, for else, we could either bring this code to the body of else, or we could just write it after the colon. Okay, there will be no difference because else will only execute one particular line. But if you want, if you are OC to the indentation, you can just bring it down so that it will not bother you that you have not followed the improper indentation rule. Okay, so while counter is less than 3, print inside loop, increment counter, else, print inside else. So the output will be like this one. So let's try to execute. Okay, so notice that after the false condition of our loop, it moves to the else condition. Good. Try this one. So it will still execute. Just add a space after the colon. Okay. Next, with the else statement, we can run a block of code once the condition is no longer true. This is another example. Print a message once the condition is false. I is equals to 1, I is less than 6, print the value of I, increment I, else print I is no longer less than 6. Okay, so let's try to run that example. While I is less than 6, print I plus or equals to 1, else print I is no longer less than 6. Try to run that. Okay, so it will execute until 5, and then after that 6, I will have a value of 6, so I is no longer less than 6. Okay, so I have again prepared exercises here for while loop, so kindly try to do them on your own time so that you could check your knowledge with regards to if and while loop. Okay, so that will be all for now, and thank you guys for listening.